Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Anna Schocket. Looking forward to our conversation today, Anna.
Likewise, Simon.
Yeah. So, listeners, Anna is an adoptive mom, and she's also an author, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the conversation. But let's start with the biggie first, right? So, thriving. What does thriving mean for you?
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into that, Simon, because thriving is so important to me, just, in my own daily essence.
Yeah.
And I really do think that it has to do with owning your own story without shame, meaning knowing who you are, acknowledging the great things, hopefully with joy, um, acknowledging the not so great things or the things you wish you could change with just openness and owning it, and not being ashamed of who you are. I think that's super important.
Yeah. And this shame has been a big thing, right?
Oh, yes.
Your adoption is a 25th, sorry, 21st century adoption, right?
Right,
It's a
right, right.
2020s adoption. So it's a recent adoption. And
Yes.
and shame was so put upon the birth mothers in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, unfortunately, also too, I think I have to assume that that shame that was put upon the birth mothers also translated into how adoptees felt about their own experience, that there was something wrong. And that to me is sad. That's sad because, people take cues from others.
Yeah.
And if there's seen to be shame in the experience somewhere, it sort of it gets internalized.
It does. It does,
Hmm.
and that is what the percentages are. I don't know how
Yeah.
many. One of the biggest challenges that we have as middle, like I put myself as call myself a middle-aged guy, right, in late 50s, 58. One of the biggest challenge with 40 to 6-year-old adoptees is this
Yes. I can
fear that
only
we're
imagine.
not good enough, that
Yeah.
we're not good enough, and
Yes.
it's not a conscious decision. It's not a conscious choice to feel like that. It's
Right.
something that takes root somehow,
Right.
and
Right.
again, how many adoptees feel like this, we really don't know.
Yeah.
But openness can only
Yes.
be a good thing in
Agree.
terms of having less shame around.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that is the key is knowing and owning your story early on. And the only way you can do that is to understand it early in an objective and joyful way. You need to hear about your story early, often, and without that stigma that gets internalized from others that implies some form of shame.
Yeah. Well, hearing it, talking about it, being open, like, being open in our conversations, never mind open generally, like open
Yes,
versus closed adoptions. It all comes down to that
I agree.
communication piece. So I want to explore what it means to you, because like so far I guess we've been talking about when we get into shame, we get into this historic stuff.
Yeah.
What does thriving mean for you as a human being, as an adoptive mom? What's it about for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I think about being an adoptive mom and being a parent, I have been searching for ways, to make sure that my daughter hears early and often that she's adopted and that there's some pain associated with it, but also joy associated with it, but that it just is, and it's her reality and it's her story, and she should be proud of it.
Yeah.
But the way to do that is always hard. I'm a big fan of teachable moments. So I use books a lot. So, when we were getting ready to go to the dentist, I used a book. When we were getting ready for her to start her first day of preschool, we used books and read it often and often and used it as a platform to talk about her own situation. Similarly, I think for adoption, I wish there were more books out there that allowed for parents to talk about joyful adoption. There are some, um, and I know we'll talk about it. The reason why I wrote one is because I didn't find one that met my reality, and so wanted to make sure that that was something that was in the universe. But I just think it's really important to start talking about it very early. As early as you can, even earlier than you think you should. If you
Yeah.
can read stories about fairy tales, about princesses, why not read a story about adoption? I think it's a parent's self-consciousness, feeling like it's a deep topic to not start early, when in fact, again, if you treat it like just the reality that it is without shame, why not start talking as soon as or even before a child can speak?
Yeah. A friend of mine, Jude, who's been on the show and interviewed me, a fellow adoptee, her, she's similar age to me, a little bit younger. I don't know how. It's embarrassing. Sorry if you're listening to this, Jude. Um, but she talks about her adoptive mum, her mum,
Yes.
mentioning the word adoption to her, telling her on the day that she first held her in her arms, or whatever.
Mm,
I'm not sure, like single figure days, first couple of days of her life,
right.
straight from hospital, because she felt that if she didn't tell her then
Yes.
she would never tell her. So
Mhm.
tell her before the child has got a clue, and at five,
Yeah.
2 days old, 5 days old, clearly nothing's going on. Um, I want to just flip the conversation slightly. So,
Mhm.
what's your daughter teaching you about you?
Oh my gosh. So much. And all the parents out there who are listening, I'm sure, know that parenting is not for the faint of heart, right? Teaching me that, you know, actually, the older that I get, the more patient I get, the more I feel like I'm able to pause and be curious. Um, that, you know, there
Is
is so much
she's
joy.
making you more patient?
She is, because you have to be. Because if you don't, you lose it.
Yeah,
So she also finds so much joy in the littlest of things. We went walking around or scooting. She's got a scooter. Um, we went scooting around the neighborhood the other day, and she needed to stop at every flower and smell it. And it took us forever to get around that neighborhood loop. But my goodness, that was so lovely. I mean, she was stopping and smelling the flowers, right? Smelling the roses.
yeah.
Was lovely.
That's the thing. That's the thing. People say that,
Hmm. Absolutely.
but it
But
is a
also,
thing for your daughter.
it is a thing for her. She loves flowers. But also, I think, I watch her, after having talked about adoption, and I've heard her talk about her story to other people, especially associated with our book. And she seems proud of it. And there is no shame that I'm seeing in her, which is amazing, even though I'm looking for it, hoping that it's not there. And I just get a little tear in my eye every time I hear her talk about it, which is amazing.
Yeah,
And she's 3.5. So,
yeah,
that's a wonderful start. I'm really happy about it.
yeah. What did you learn about yourself going through the adoption process?
Oh gosh. It was one of the most humbling experiences, I think, of my life. I think resiliency. I think humility, right? Just being open, curious, um, uh, you know, also recognizing that as an adoptive mom who is putting herself out there to hopefully be the parent of someone's child, because today, the process is you get chosen through private adoption by the birth parents. Um, it's humbling in terms of putting yourself out there, hoping to be that person that they're interested in putting their child with. And then when you're chosen, it's humbling to feel that you have been sort of blessed and honored by that parent or family, to take on their most precious asset, their child.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it was just a very humbling experience.
yeah. You mentioned the word resilience, which is a
Yeah.
a word we like on here on Driving Adoptees. What
Hmm.
what does resilience mean to you in this context, Anna?
It's a couple of things. I know there was resilience as it related to the extensive process to be approved to adopt and all of that. So just continuing to go through the motions and not being deterred by things that were extremely intimidating or intrusive. Then resilience to go through what was a humbling process, I jokingly tell my friends that it's like online dating times 20, because whereas online dating, you put together a little profile through the adoption process, I had to put together an 8-page glossy brochure with articles about myself, hoping to seem compelling to someone as an adoptive parent. And then, of course, going through the process through the courts of getting the adoption process finalized and things like that, and then just the resiliency of being a parent, which I don't think I have to tell anybody who's a parent on this call that that it's a thing. It's a thing. It's a daily challenge, and you're learning to regulate your emotions regularly, to be creative, to make sure you have high energy as you work with your own kids, and yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that in the parenting world that
Yes.
we can't regulate a child if we're not regulated ourselves, I think is the sorts of things that people say. So
Mhm.
what have been your learnings in that space?
I can't remember the theorist that I read, but I realized that you know, I react often to things that she does that seem like she's trying to get the better of me, when in fact I need to pause and be curious and think, what is it that's going on for her? So I do often, when she's throwing a fit or being frenetic or something, pause and say, wait a second, Lily, what's going on for you? Please use your words. And that's like a mantra of ours. And she'll pause and take a moment, and then she'll say something that often has nothing to do with the circumstance in the moment. Like she's angry at me for being distracted on my phone, or that I was having a conversation with another adult and wasn't paying attention to her or something. So it's fascinating to pause, be curious, and then you get to some deeper things that are going on that, again, I just, if I hadn't sort of gone through this process and I think learned from this theorist that it's a really good practice. I wouldn't have done it. Certainly in my normal adult life, I probably should do that more. I always think about presume good intent, when I get frustrated, but you have to do that with your kids as well.
Yeah.
It's
So what have
interesting.
been the teachable moments for you then?
Yeah, gosh, teachable moments. It's like every day is a teachable moment, Simon. Um, well, in terms of, are you thinking in terms of parenting or in terms of the adoption journey?
I, I'm thinking about the more significant, more kind of profound stuff. I'm not. I'm interested in the depth stuff,
Yeah.
wherever that is, whatever part of your life that is.
Well, one of the things I think is it's sort of back to what we talked about before. Lean into your truth. Lean in. Like I know when I realized that I wanted a family, and have for years, and it just wasn't happening the way I wanted it. And I just decided one day, that's it. I'm going to make this happen for myself. I know I can create an amazing home for a child, with my amazing found family of friends and family, network. This would be an amazing place for a child. So I
And you're
decided to
doing
put
this.
myself
You're
out
doing
there.
this on your own. You're not. You
I'm
don't
doing
have
it
a
on my
partner. Yeah.
own. Absolutely not with a partner. In fact, interestingly enough, I had a partner before this who's still an amazing friend of mine. And he's still very much involved in my daughter's life. And she sees him a bit like a father figure, but he just wasn't in a place where he wanted to be a parent. And he owned it, which was lovely. And so I said, okay, I understand that, but I do. And he said, I think you should. And so I did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what have been you talked about this curiosity,
Yeah.
yeah, and patience. What else have you learned? Are you learning about raising your daughter?
Mm. You know, it's interesting. I think one of the things that has been super important for me is continue to give really good messages, really positive messages. She hears a lot from other kids at school, and even some of the messages that she gets from just, mainstream media, books, stories, you know, shows, etc. Um, and I just want her to be a good person. And so, um, the other day she was like, I look beautiful. And I want her to have amazing confidence and be very proud of herself. But I said to her, beauty is, it comes from inside. It's so important that you're a good, kind, lovely person. And then you will be beautiful no matter what you're wearing or what you look like, and trying to start early with those kind of messages um, has been also, um, an interesting experience for me,
Yeah.
you know?
What did you started the definition of thriving talking about owning our story without shame.
Yes.
What what did you learn about your own story in going through the process?
Yeah.
Doing the 8-page brochure, etc.
Oh my gosh, going through that process, my own story. Well, of course, I'm human, just like everyone else. So I felt very self-conscious putting it together, thinking, am I good enough? Am I compelling enough to someone else? Can I be a parent? Am I going to be a good parent? I felt in my heart I could, but it's a little unnerving. It's a big life change. Um, so, I went through my own version of fighting any form of shame, especially as a single parent, thinking, gosh, am I going to be able to adopt? Is anyone going to want to put their child with me? I later learned from, a friend and even some adoption professionals who said, gosh, a single mom who has means for some women is more comfortable than a couple, especially if that birth mother has been burned by men in the past. And that was reassuring, at least for me in my situation, because I thought, okay, there is hope. There is going to be someone who will be interested. And in my own situation, interestingly enough, the birth parents were together and married at the time, but planning a divorce and very young. And it was the birth father who chose me, interestingly enough, because I was the most like his single mom. which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
just really interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you put the word fighting with shame. That's, that's an interesting combination.
Yeah, yeah.
Why is it fighting shame? Why does that?
I think shame is that specter that crawls into your life at various corners when you least expect it. I think it happens. It's that, you know, that imposter syndrome, that feeling of inadequacy that I I anticipate everybody has at some point in their life. Some of us more than others. Um,
But you're
and
laughing about it as you're laughing about it as you're describing it now.
I am. Well, with all this talk about, fighting shame to that point, it's like my head knows it, but it's so deeply ingrained, and it comes from a deep, dark place in all of us. It's hard not to go there. But you have to overcome it. It's the being curious. Pause, take a moment like I do with Lily. Why am I feeling this way? Use my words. And, you know, try to figure out how I can move
Yeah.
past it, right?
Yeah.
And overcome it.
Isn't there a danger of this thingification? Have you heard of thingification?
I don't even know if I
Think,
have. Explain it, would you?
thingification.
Yeah.
Well, we imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So it's a thing. We make it a thing. So for me,
Thing.
uh,
Yeah.
imposter syndrome kind of it's a manifestation, to use a fancy word, it, of shame. Yeah. So
It is.
not
Oh,
not
it
being,
so is.
but we've thingified it,
Mm.
right? We said, oh, I didn't even know that that was a thing, and then it becomes a thing, and
I
it
actually think that's a good thing.
you think it's a good thing that it becomes a
I
thing.
think it's a good thing to thingy because it calls it out. It calls it, it names it. Once you name it, you can address it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's something you just assume you're the only person who's dealing with it, and it becomes this thing that festers.
Yeah.
So suddenly you can talk about it, and other people talk about it,
Yeah.
and you hear about other people's journeys. So I actually think it's a good thing, this thingification of at least that.
Yeah. So I think it makes it bigger. It
Mm,
festers. It's not a thing. It's a feeling that comes and goes, right?
mm,
To me, it feels
yeah,
to me, imposter syndrome is a thing made of shame, but
yeah,
the
it is.
feelings of shame come and go. You know, sometimes you're thinking that you're not good enough, and then sometimes you're thinking that you are, and
Hmm.
therefore the thingification for me is kind of a danger because we make it seem like it's realer. It grows legs. It has more validity rather than
Mm.
something that is fleeting.
I mean, I see why you have that perspective. I can see where you're going with it. I think the reason why it has value in my mind is that there are a number of, speakers, theorists, people like Brene Brown, who I think is fantastic, who then talk about it. Whereas I think otherwise it doesn't get talked about. And once it gets talked about, suddenly you feel like you're not the only one. You're
Yeah,
like, oh, gosh, it's a thing. Well, then I can overcome this because other people are talking about their journeys to overcome it. I don't know. Somehow I feel like that's reassuring for a lot of people who otherwise would just stew and feel self-conscious.
yeah,
It's calling it out. Yeah, putting it out in the open.
pulling it out there.
Hmm.
I think it probably cuts both ways, right?
Yep, it
So I
might.
can see your point with it
Yeah,
reassuring and that realizing that we're not going mad, that other people have felt that way before.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that it's normal,
Yeah,
sadly.
sadly.
Yeah.
So the process has been fairly you're smiling all the way through this. Any
I,
the things
yeah, I was
must have
really
been some dark
blessed.
stuff, right?
I did have, I mean, there were bumpy administrative issues, crazy things like when Lily was born, her birth certificate was incorrect. And in the state of California where I live, it took another, oh gosh, 9+ months to just correct the birth certificate before we could even begin the court process, which as an adoptive parent is so unnerving, right? Because you really want this process to be done and dusted, to use a UK term, to be
Yeah,
finalized so that you feel like even though I knew that, a lot of the papers had been signed to confirm that she was in fact my child and wouldn't be taken away, to formalize things like a social security number, formalize around my taxes. That wasn't done for about at least 2 years, which is a long time, to be sitting in the courts.
yeah.
To leave the country, I had to get a special judge's permission because of the delay that had taken place. So
Wow, tricky
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Bureaucracy.
yeah.
So what's gets in the way of what gets in our way of our thriving, other than the bureaucracy and the hiccups and the imposter syndrome?
I think, the well-meaning individuals who keep poking at you. What I mean by that is, when I walk into my daughter's school and one of the little 3-year-olds runs up and says, why wasn't Lily, my daughter's name, grown in your belly? It's the first thing in the morning. I'm trying to get her settled and what have you. And I'm answering this really deep but legit question to a 3-year-old and wanting to make sure that I'm, again, speaking in a way that demonstrates, pride and not shame about our adoption story. And, I have friends who have children, adoptive children who are of a different race, and it's the tactless older lady on the bus who wants to ask the story about your relationship with the child. It's the constant um uh questions that maybe catch you off guard, that you think you've got a good progress going, and you're mitigating shame and you're talking about everything with joy and what have you, and then suddenly you get these questions that kind of undermine what you've been trying to do, and you just have to keep going, stay the course, continue
Yeah.
to
Well,
make
you
sure
can,
that you communicate.
because that little kid's not going to go away until you've answered the question, right?
Exactly. And he's not going to be the only one in her life, so yeah. So it's just it's a daily battle. Um, but it's important to just continue to stay the course and, again, own your story without shame.
Yeah.
Stick to it.
So let's talk about the book.
Yes.
Why did you create the book? Why did you write the book?
Well, as I had mentioned to you before, I am big on teachable moments, and I use books as a way to normalize things in life, right? And so as I looked at books about adoption, and was searching for the best books out there, I just found so many of them had, two parents talking about, mommy and daddy, in the context of the story. And so here I am trying to talk about a very deep, serious topic, with my 3-year-old, my two, at the time, probably 2-year-old, and start introducing something, and then, needing to modify the story mid-story or talk about the story. It just brings up a difficult subject in the context of another difficult subject that kind of undermines what you're trying to do. And that was frustrating for me. So I thought, geez, I jokingly said to friends, this makes me crazy. I should just write my own book. And and then I did, which is amazing. That's been another humbling process altogether. It's called The Heart That Found You, and it's for children. that my daughter's age 3 to 5, and it's purposefully non-gender, non-race oriented. So really anyone could use, and it doesn't exclude two parents households, but for single parents or even, LGBTQ couples, it allows for a discussion about a parent's connection to a child that they've adopted and gives them some context for that story.
Yeah. And why was that process humbling for you?
Oh, uh, being a book author in a space where I've never done any book writing at all. So once again, putting myself out there with a book, hoping that someone thinks it's worthy of any form of publishing, and then finding a hybrid publisher that was willing to work with me on it, and and getting excitement from them in the process, and from the entire team in terms of producing it, and then putting it out there, to the world. I just actually announced to my entire network, many of whom had no idea I even adopted a child. So my professional network as well, that I launched a Kickstarter, and to help raise funds to market the book and really get it out there to families who might need it. So yeah, the whole thing has been humbling.
Yeah.
It's all
So
new.
there's been a big smile on your face all the way through our interview, and it seems like there's some steel there.
Oh, well, you'd hope. Yes. Yes. I mean, generally a strong person. I fight through it all the time. So even if I feel self-conscious, even if I've never done something before, I usually take the perspective of one step at a time,
Yeah.
one step at a time. It feels overwhelming. We'll figure it out. So that's what you got to do.
So when did that become a teachable moment that landed for you?
Oh my gosh, I think I did that. That was an early on. That was a childhood thing, I think, which is great. And I don't know if I necessarily got that from my parents, or if I've just always been that person, but yeah, I've always wanted to take things on. And especially if I see things that I think are an issue, sometimes big things, an issue in a larger context, organizational or community wide, or, in this case, um, sort of a broader cultural statement, if you will. I often lean in and want to take those things on in my own way.
Yeah.
So,
What do you mean by leaning in?
well, it's a big deal to put yourself out there, to write a book and, announce to the, um, the broader world, hey, I'm a single adoptive mom, and you know, I've written a book, and what have you. So, it's just a humbling thing to sort of, as a private person, which is what I generally am, to just be out there with my story and my life. But I figure you got to take one for the team, and it's an important story to tell, and so that's why I'm doing it.
And what does Lily make of it all?
Oh, she loves the book. She loves the book. She considers it our book. We read it as soon as the advanced reader copy came out. We read it during family week at her preschool, which was amazing. Sorry,
Yeah.
I still remember it. And no, she's really proud of it. She's proud of the book. She's proud of me. She's proud of her in the context of it. And she, bless her, can tell the story of her own adoption uh, story through because of that book. And she explains in her own words what's going on in the book as it relates to her own story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I've not asked you about that you want to? Oh, there's links to the Kickstarter in the show notes and Anna's website as usual, listeners.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Is there anything that you'd like to share that I've not asked you about, Anna?
Gosh, I don't know. I think just reiterating, don't hide it makes me very upset when I hear people haven't told their children that they're adopted. And as they get older and older and older, I think it's the worst that it gets. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Even if there's trauma in the context, there's always a way to tell the story and to just make it be your reality. And so, um, yeah, again, if my little book does anything to help parents tell their own story and make sure that their kids know their story, then I've done what I needed to.
Yeah,
So I'm excited to get it out in the world.
fantastic. Thanks, Anna, and thank you, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Simon.